Beth was a 50-year-old woman living with end-stage cancer. When I entered her patient room for the first time, she was in deep conversation with a man whom she obviously adored. Beth also wore her suffering. She was gaunt, breathless, and unable to move without eliciting excruciating pain. Despite this, Beth also wore this air of aliveness and knowingness that struck at the core of my own humanity. Over the several days I served as one of Beth's physicians, she shared with me her life as a wife and a teacher and a gardener, and how her illness had given her this insight and this clarity to the things that mattered most in life. One day, she laughed somewhat sadly at the hilarity that it took cancer for her to see this. Beth died a few short months after our brief encounter, but her legacy lived on in what became the burning question of my work. Is there a way to give this insight, this gift of choosing to live a life for the things that matter most without having to wait for the crisis to occur? As a hospice and palliative medicine physician, bearing witness to and mitigating suffering are the primary practices of my day-to-day life. In that work, my patients have taught me that there are three primary things that stand in the way of claiming this so-called gift. The first is that our society's definition of health is antiquated and is at the heart of why so many people suffer. Two, we have a misunderstanding of well-being, especially how it relates to suffering. And three, it's best said by Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. People have a hard time letting go of their suffering. Out of fear of the unknown, they prefer suffering that is familiar. We've attempted to address this issue with the definition of health for almost a century. Modern medicine is founded on the principles of pathogenesis, the study of disease. As a result, health has been defined as the absence of disease. We have practiced and educated for millennia, paying heed to this physical reductionist model of health, as disease was largely the consequence of threats from our external environment, things like epidemics and famine and war. However, following World War II, we began to appreciate the depth and breadth of mental illness. And to this point, the World Health Organization put forth a new definition of health in 1948. It espoused that health is a state of complete physical, social, and mental well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Despite its circular nature, still renders health as a state that you're in or you're not, thus defaulting back to the absence or presence of disease, the WHO definition has served us in a significant way. It appreciates our multidimensionality. It introduces us to the concept of well-being. But most significantly, it recognizes the shift in the types of disease that pose the largest threat to our existence. The external environment is no longer our greatest threat. Our internal environment is. Today, over 80% of illness is a direct or indirect consequence of our lifestyle choices. Instead of dying of disease like starvation and infection and injury, we are now dying of the dis-ease of multitasking, overconsumption, and judgment. It doesn't help that well-being is this vague concept that most of us associate with the tangible outcomes of wealth and happiness and success. But the exploding field of positive psychology is really helping us to better understand this concept of well-being. It offers that well-being and suffering are a paradigm of both and. Our disease is founded in the ways that we suffer, We suffer ignorance when we forget who and what we really are. We suffer egocentricity when we allow the little voice in our head to be who we are. When we seek to avoid pain or overindulge pleasure, we suffer isolation. And for many, they suffer living in the constant fear of death. If this both and paradigm is happening, then we can say that we experience well-being through these opposing forces of knowledge, self-discovery, love, and wisdom. It is this paradigm of both and that is the unknown of Hans' quote, is the insight my patient Beth fully embodied, and is the antidote we need to face the threat of dis-ease. If the both and is the antidote, then health is the catalyst that brings the both and to life. Our ignorance is merged with knowledge in the health of curiosity, where we are reminded of our shared human experience. Awareness harnesses our ego for self-discovery, where we honor our individual human experiences. Connection puts us in touch with ourselves, others, and the world around us, marrying our isolation with love. And finally, the health of being links us to our highest self, transforming our fear into wisdom. From this view, health becomes then a set of skills: curiosity, awareness, connection, and being, rather than a state. That then creates an environment and an experience of the day-to-day both and. Okay, so let's explore this a little bit more. Pretty big idea. I'm going to give you an analogy. What if we think of health like we do driving? We're able to hold that driving is a set of skills as well as an experience. We have an entire industry and a governance structure that is dependent upon and fully appreciates this kind of duality of integrated skill and experience. What would it look like if we did that for health? Where driving is the skill set and experience of operating a vehicle, then health becomes the skill set and experience of living a human life. When we begin driving, we're first asked to learn the mechanics of operating a vehicle and the rules of the road. Likewise, as humans, we're all subject to anatomy and physiology and certain rules that govern our lives. If you actually take the components of a car and the functions of a car, it's easy to draw parallels to a human being. If you look at the health analogy of the rules of the road, things get a little more interesting. We are inextricably tied to nature through her cycles and her laws. Things like thermodynamics and gravity and time set out some hard and fast boundaries, but we continue to violate them and have become accidents just waiting to happen. For example, in 2017, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to the clock genes. This work shows that we as humans are dependent on the solar cycle, yet we continue to allow blue light and the 24-hour workday to pollute our sleep cycles, disrupt our natural hormonal rhythms, rendering us in a state of suffocating fatigue, the hallmark of dis-ease. This learned ignorance is combated with the first skill of health: curiosity. Curiosity trumps the epidemic of judgment because it allows us to learn and explore. Like the mechanics and the rules of the road, curiosity is a return to the basics, where we are reminded of our shared human experiences within the context of nature's rules. Awareness is the second skill of health. Once you learn the mechanics and the rules of the road, you got to get into a car and start driving. And as you guys can remember, driving sometimes is very uncomfortable and robotic and task-oriented until there comes a time where you're able to harness the full power of the vehicle and its unique capabilities. This process is often derailed by well-meaning teachers and parents and friends offering their opinion on how you should be driving. Likewise, as humans, we all have our unique power and capability, yet we don't honor these differences. Instead, we build structures of haves and have-nots, falling victim to the trap of the ego and what I lovingly call the horrible case of the shoulds. You should take this new pill, and I should eat this new diet. Awareness harnesses our ego as a tool rather than an identity. This allows for self-discovery, where we can operate our embodied vehicles, celebrating our individual powers and mastery of our unique capability. Curiosity and awareness give way to connection. Just like in driving in life, we're asked to continually recognize and respond to information coming from within, from others in the world around us. At this point, I will share with you the theory of no unmitigated good. Psychologists Adam Grant and Barry Schwartz describe an inverted U-curve to illustrate the relationship between deficit, moderation, and excess. Their research shows that there is a point of diminishing returns where having more doesn't equal better. Our miraculous inventions of the last century in energy and communication and transportation have served to algorithmically launch our evolution forward. But we have hit this point of diminishing returns. We're having so much to choose from, and the resulting decision fatigue have left people isolated, overwhelmed in a haze of multitasking and mindless overconsumption. This would be the equivalent of driving in a snowstorm. You mess with your navigation tool, a text pops up, you go to read it, look up, oh my gosh, the semi in front of me has stopped, I swerve, missed the accident, but then my exit to a warm and safe destination. By eliminating the unnecessary noise of too much, we can connect to our senses, our emotions, marrying our suffering of isolation with the well-being of love. Finally, there is the health of being. As it's been said, we are not human doings. We are human beings, and it couldn't be more true. Every time you get into a car, there is intent and purpose. Sadly, in my work, intent and purpose is typically driven by fear, resulting in the worst of suffering, anger, depression, anxiety. By cultivating moments of silence and stillness, just being links us back to our highest self and reminds us that we're part of something much, much bigger, cultivating that purposeful and intentional both and, marrying our fears with wisdom. All of this is to say, crisis is not necessary. Your gift is just waiting to be claimed. Right now, you can choose to see health differently. It's a set of skills: curiosity, awareness, connection, and being that drives your day-to-day experience of the both and, moving you away from the threat of dis-ease and toward living a life for the things that matter most. Thank you.